Every Monday at 9 a.m., I sent my kids $700 without fail. It was my quiet way of keeping peace, of pretending we were still a family. But last week, they skipped my birthday. No call. No message. Nothing. When I finally asked why, my son's voice came cold and steady. Your birthday means nothing to us. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just opened my phone, hands trembling, and started deleting the weekly payments, one by one. 40 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. And that message changed everything. For 8 straight months, my Mondays had followed the same script: coffee brewing, tired eyes, and that $700 transfer to each of my kids at exactly 9 a.m. It wasn't love anymore. It was habit. Maybe guilt. Maybe hope that if I kept giving, they'd finally see me, not as a burden, not as the parent who'd overstayed her usefulness, but as family again. After my shifts at the diner, I'd sit at the kitchen table with my laptop open, old photos of them taped to the wall beside the bills. I'd type in the same numbers every week, then stare at the confirmation screen blinking like a heartbeat. Payment sent. Peace bought. They never thanked me. They never even mentioned it. When their car broke down, I covered the repair before they asked. When their rent ran late, I called the landlord myself. It wasn't generosity. It was survival, keeping them comfortable enough not to resent me. I told myself that's what good parents do, keep giving until the love comes back. But lately the silence after each payment felt heavier. Like the quiet hum of a fridge in an empty house, steady, but cold. The morning after my birthday, I found the decorations still clinging to the ceiling fan. A single pink ribbon twirled lazily in the breeze, mocking me. The half-eaten cake sat on the counter, candles bent sideways. No one had shown up to light them. I'd waited until midnight, phone on the table, screen lighting the dark. But the only messages that came were from stores offering birthday discounts. Now, sitting there with coffee gone cold, I stared at the phone again. Maybe they'd texted overnight. Maybe they'd remembered. But there was nothing, no apology, no sorry, Mom, no we'll come by soon. Just digital quiet. I scrolled through our family group chat. The last message was mine: can't wait to celebrate with you all on Sunday. Red heart both seen. No reply. I pressed my thumb against the screen until it hurt, as if pressure alone could force a response. Then I whispered, why did I even ask? My mind replayed his voice: your birthday doesn't matter to us anymore. Not shouted. Not angry. Just casual. Effortless cruelty. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. The light above flickered, and for the first time in months I noticed how tired the walls looked, pale, cracked, and patient. Like they'd been listening to this silence for years. Maybe I'd been paying for their love all along. Renting it week by week. The kettle whistled behind me, but I didn't move. I thought about the little girl who used to draw cards for me every birthday, my daughter, Lila, and the boy who once saved his allowance to buy me a necklace from the thrift store. Back then, love was loud. Now it came with direct deposit. By afternoon, I couldn't keep pretending it didn't hurt. So I did what mothers do: I cleaned. Scrubbed the counters. Wiped the windows. Anything to quiet my thoughts. But every motion pulled me deeper into that ache. The doorbell rang around 3. I froze, heart tripping in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, they'd come after all. I smoothed my hair, checked the mirror, opened the door. It was a courier, a delivery from a bakery 2 streets over. A white box with a note taped to the top. For a moment my hand shook. Could it be from them? Maybe a late gesture? But when I peeled the note off, it wasn't theirs. It was from my neighbor, Mrs. Riley. Thought you deserved something sweet. Happy belated birthday. That small kindness broke something open. Not in pain, in clarity. Strangers remembered. My own blood forgot. I brought the cake inside, set it next to yesterday's ruined one, and stared at them both. 2 cakes. 2 symbols. 1 bought with money. 1 given with care. As the sun dipped behind the houses, the shadows in my kitchen stretched long and thin. I sat back down at the table, hands wrapped around my mug, and whispered, maybe peace isn't something you pay for. At 9:07 p.m., I checked my phone again out of habit. The same banking app glowed on the screen. 2 recurring transfers scheduled for next week. My thumb hovered above the cancel button. Then I pressed it. Click. Confirm. Delete. The sound was small but final. 8 months of habit erased in 3 taps. For a long moment, I just sat there listening to the house breathe, the hum of the fridge, the pipes settling, the faint rattle of the window pane. It all felt new, like silence was finally taking my side. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Lila. Can you send the usual early this week? We're short on rent. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I locked the phone, set it face down, and whispered, not this time. I stared at Lila's text for a long time. Can you send the usual early this week? We're short on rent. No hi, Mom. No, how are you feeling? Not even a late happy birthday. Just the usual. Like I was a walking ATM with a soft voice and a tired smile. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have typed a dozen things. Sure, sweetheart. Of course. I'll see what I can do. Those were the sentences I'd spent years hiding behind. Little bandages over a wound that was never allowed to heal. Instead, I locked the phone and set it face down on the table. The screen went dark, and for the first time in a long time, I let it stay that way. The house felt strangely loud in the silence that followed. The clock on the wall ticked like a metronome. The fridge hummed. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. Every sound reminded me that life goes on, whether my children called me or not. I stood up slowly, my knees cracking the way they do when you've spent too many years bending. The leftover birthday decorations still hung limp over the doorway. I walked over and began taking them down one by one, ribbons, balloons, the little paper banner that read Happy Birthday, MOM. In gold letters I'd printed myself. I'd hung it the night before, imagining Ethan and Lila laughing when they walked in. I'd pictured them hugging me, teasing me about getting older, maybe fighting over who got the corner piece of cake. Instead, the only thing that had filled the living room was the soft buzz of the TV and my own forced laughter at sitcom reruns. I pressed the banner to my chest for a moment, then folded it carefully and slid it into a drawer. Never again, I whispered. I didn't know if I was talking about the banner, the party, or the way I let myself hope. Maybe all 3. The weight on my chest didn't vanish, but it shifted. It stopped feeling like shame and started feeling like anger, controlled, quiet anger, the kind that doesn't lash out, just steps back and says, no more. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the overhead light off, letting the glow from the street lamp fill the room. My phone lay in the center of the table, black and still. I thought about every Monday at 9 a.m. Every rushed lunch break I'd skipped so their bills could be paid on time. Every time I'd told myself, once they're stable, they'll come back. They'll remember who stood in their corner. But they'd forgotten. Or maybe they never noticed in the first place. Around midnight, I walked down the hallway and stopped at the photos lining the wall, Ethan at 6, missing his front teeth, holding a soccer trophy half his height. Lila at 7 in a sparkly ballet dress, grinning at me from the stage. In every picture, they were reaching toward the camera, toward me. When did you start pulling away? I whispered. The frames didn't answer. Back in my bedroom, the bed felt too big. I lay there staring at the ceiling until the darkness began to fade into gray. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice again, your birthday doesn't matter to us anymore. It wasn't just the words. It was how easily he'd said them. Like he was reading a weather report. Sometime near dawn, exhaustion finally dragged me under. When I woke, sunlight was already spilling across the floor. My body felt heavy, but my mind was sharp in a way it hadn't been in years. No more transfers. No more automatic yes. No more paying to be treated like a stranger. I made coffee, more out of habit than need, and sat at the table, cradling the warm mug between my hands. The phone vibrated once, then stopped. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, it rang. An unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said, answer. Hello? Good morning. Is this Mrs. Carter? A man's voice asked, polite but cautious. Yes. Who's calling? This is Mark, the property manager at Oak Ridge Apartments. Your number is listed as an emergency contact for Ethan Carter. I just wanted to check in. His rent hasn't come through this month, and I know you usually handle it. There it was. The assumption. The pattern. The invisible title stamped on my forehead, financial backup. I took a slow breath. I don't handle it anymore, I said. My voice surprised me, steady, almost calm. He'll need to speak to you directly. There was a pause on the other end. Oh. It's just, he said you must have forgotten. That you always send it on Mondays. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. I didn't forget, I said quietly. I stopped. Another small silence. I imagined the property manager shifting awkwardly at his desk, caught between policy and pity. Understood, Mrs. Carter. I'll contact him. Thank you, I replied, and hung up before he could say anything else. The moment the call ended, I felt it, a snap. Like a rope that had been stretched too thin for too long finally breaking. I wasn't their safety net anymore. I was just a woman in her kitchen, drinking lukewarm coffee, finally letting her money and her dignity stay in the same place. Around noon, my sister, Jenna, called. Claire, what did you do? She blurted as soon as I picked up. No hello. No good morning. I sighed. Nice to hear your voice too. She exhaled hard. Ethan called me. Said you've cut them off and are refusing to help with anything. He made it sound like you'd lost your mind. I laughed softly, more air than sound. Define lost. Claire, seriously. I cancelled the weekly transfers, I said. That's all. I'm done paying for grown adults who can't remember my birthday, but can remember my bank balance. Jenna went quiet for a few seconds. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, less sharp, more tired. Good, she said. I frowned. Good? Yeah, she replied. Because I've been sending them money too. My stomach dropped. What? Not as much as you, Jenna said quickly. A couple hundred here and there. Groceries. Phone bills. They told me you couldn't manage all their expenses alone and they didn't want to stress you. I thought I was helping. I sank back in my chair, gripping the edge of the table. They never told me. They never told me about you either, she said. Looks like we've both been paying rent on the same guilt. I closed my eyes, anger and hurt swirling into something sharper. So it wasn't just me they'd been using. It was anyone who loved them enough to reach for their wallet before their boundaries. Jenna, I whispered, we've been enabling them. Not anymore, she said firmly. I told Ethan this morning I'm done. I love those kids, but I'm not their bank. Neither are you. For the first time that day, I felt something like relief. Not joy. Not victory. Just the comfort of knowing I wasn't crazy for feeling used. Thank you, I murmured. Don't thank me, she replied. Thank yourself for finally saying no. I've been waiting years for you to choose you. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Yesterday, that silence had felt like punishment. Today, it felt like a door closing gently instead of slamming. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call. It was a notification from social media. Lila Carter started a live video, the truth about my mother. My stomach turned to ice. I tapped the screen with shaking fingers, and the video opened, my daughter's face filling the frame, eyes shiny, voice trembling just enough to look fragile. "Hey, everyone," she began, sniffing delicately. "I don't usually share personal things, but I can't stay silent anymore about the way my mom treats us." I stared at the phone, my heart pounding. So this was how they were going to repay me. Not with gratitude. Not with honesty. But with a story. About me. The live video filled my screen before I could think of a reason not to tap it. Lila Carter started a live video, the truth about my mother. Her face appeared first, perfectly angled, tears jewel-bright in the corners of her eyes. She had my cheekbones, my mouth, my tendency to chew the inside of her lip when she was nervous. But right now, she looked like a stranger playing a role she'd rehearsed. "Hey, everyone," she sniffed, voice trembling just enough to sound fragile. "I don't usually do this, but I can't stay quiet anymore about what's really been going on with my mom." The chat exploded with hearts and comments as viewers joined. "What happened? Stay strong, girl Redheart, we're listening." I watched, frozen, as my daughter took a deep breath and tilted her head slightly, like she was about to deliver a monologue. "She's cut us off completely," Lila said. "Just, out of nowhere. After everything we've done for her. After all the times we've supported her emotionally, she decided she's done with us and doesn't care if we end up homeless." Emotionally. The word lodged in my throat like a stone. A second later, Ethan leaned into the frame. He was sitting beside her on the couch, arms slung along the backrest like they were giving a casual update instead of rewriting our entire history. "Yeah," he added, jaw tight. "She told us her birthday was proof we're selfish and ungrateful. She's weaponizing money now. Saying we only talk to her for cash. It's like, our existence doesn't matter to her unless we're worshipping her or something." I blinked. Had we had the same conversation? Because the one I remembered ended with "your birthday doesn't matter to us anymore." Lila lifted her phone closer, the screen reflecting in her widened eyes. "And just to be clear," she said, her voice wobbling, "we never asked her to send us all that money. She insisted. She used it to control us. If we didn't answer immediately, she'd guilt trip us. If we couldn't come over, she'd say we didn't love her enough." My stomach twisted. I wanted to shout into the screen, "No. That's not what happened. I was begging you to visit. I never once used the money as a weapon. I just wanted you to be okay." But the live chat didn't care about my version. That's emotional abuse. Parents like that are so manipulative. Cut her off before she hurts you more. Money doesn't mean love. Ethan leaned closer, eyes fixed on the camera. "She's mad because we didn't show up for her birthday," he said flatly. "But you know what? Her birthday doesn't matter more than our bills and our sanity. We're adults. We have lives. We can't drop everything because she wants a pity party." There it was again. Those words. This time, delivered to an audience. I felt my fingers go numb around the phone. The room seemed to tilt slightly, the edges of my vision dimming. Lila nodded sadly, squeezing his arm. "I didn't forget her birthday," she said. "I just couldn't deal with the guilt trip if we went. She always makes everything about her. We're trying to set boundaries, but she's painting us as monsters. So this is us defending ourselves. Boundaries. They were calling this boundaries." Comments fluttered up the side of the screen like confetti. "Setting boundaries is healthy fire. My mom is exactly like this. I'm so sorry. You don't owe her anything just because she gave birth to you. Parents can be toxic too." A few comments pushed back. "But didn't she send you money every week? There's more to this, I can feel it. Respect goes both ways." But they were buried quickly beneath the wave of support. Lila pressed her lips together, then whispered, "If she sees this, I hope she understands, her birthday doesn't matter more than our mental health." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. Her feelings don't pay our rent. We love her, but we're done being manipulated with cash and guilt. Love. They kept using that word like it hadn't just been strangled on live video. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. My reflection haunted the black frame, puffy eyes, a groove etched between my brows from years of worry. I didn't recognize that woman. She looked like someone who'd stayed quiet far too long. I couldn't watch anymore. I closed the live and stared at the home screen, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the hum of the fridge. Within seconds, notifications started flashing. Are you seeing this? Is that about you? Claire, call me. Now. I turned the phone over, screen down, and pressed both palms flat on the table until the wood grain bit into my skin. For a few minutes, I just breathed. In. Out. In. Out. The way the nurse had taught me when Ethan was born, and the pain had felt like it might split me in half. The door to the past had been slammed in my face a long time ago. I hadn't realized they'd locked it from their side and posted a sign that read, "Monster Inside." The phone buzzed again, skittering slightly across the table. I flipped it over. A text from Jenna. Don't post anything. Don't comment. Don't defend yourself. Let them choke on their own version. I stared at her message. But they're lying, I typed, fingers flying. They're twisting everything. People are believing them. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. I know. Let them. You taught them they could use your silence. Now use it for yourself. The people who really know you won't need a video to decide who you are. I swallowed hard. My instinct had always been to chase the misunderstanding, to fix, to explain, to apologize for things I never did. To hold the door open even while they walked past me with cold eyes. But something in Jenna's words settled inside me like a stone in a river, heavy, steady, unmovable. I put the phone aside and went to the sink. The leftover cake still sat under its plastic cover, frosting smudged, candles unused. I lifted the lid, cut it into neat slices, and wrapped each piece in foil. I took some to the freezer, some to a plate for Mrs. Riley next door. If anyone deserved sweetness from me, it was the woman who remembered my birthday with no obligation attached. When I came back to the table, the phone was buzzing nonstop. Group chats. Tags. Screenshots. I finally opened one message from a woman I barely knew, someone from church who always waved but never stayed long enough to talk. I saw the live. I don't know your kids well, but I know you show up for everyone. If you need anything, I'm here. Another message followed from an old coworker. Claire, I remember you working double shifts to buy Ethan's football boots. Don't let the internet tell your story. Tears burned behind my eyes, but they didn't fall. They just sat there, hot and stubborn. By evening, the video had been shared dozens of times. Some comments were cruel. Some were kind. Some were just rubberneckers at a family car crash. I made myself dinner. I didn't eat much. My fork scraped the plate, metal against ceramic, steady as a metronome. Each scrape said the same thing. You are still here. You are still here. You are still here. That night, I plugged my phone in across the room, not beside my bed. The glow of notifications flickered through the dark like distant lightning, but I didn't reach for it. Instead, I lay on my back and stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet house. My children had told the world I was a villain. They'd made my love sound like a weapon. My support, like control. My pain, like manipulation. And yet, beneath all of that, a single thought kept rising like a tide I couldn't hold back. If they're willing to lie this easily in public, what else are they willing to do? I didn't know it then, but the answer would show up sooner than I expected, in a place I never thought I'd see them, surrounded by people who finally heard the truth in their own words. And this time I wouldn't have to say a thing. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my kitchen table like nothing had happened. But it had. And everyone knew it. The video had spread overnight. By breakfast, my face wasn't on camera, but my name was. My kids had made sure of that. Their followers shared it. Friends reposted it. By the time I opened my phone, my notifications looked like a storm: messages from neighbors, distant relatives, even old coworkers who hadn't texted me in years. Some offered sympathy. Some offered advice. Some just wanted drama. The world had turned my heartbreak into a discussion thread. At 10 a.m., the phone rang again. I almost ignored it until I saw the name, Mr. Daniels, my landlord. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," he began carefully, as if my name might shatter in his mouth. "I just wanted to check in. The rent payments you've been making for Ethan and Lila didn't come through this week." I rubbed my temples. "They won't be. I've stopped handling their bills." He hesitated. "Ah. I see. It's just, they told me you'd had a breakdown. That you might have forgotten." My breath caught in my throat. "A breakdown?" "That's what they said," he replied awkwardly. "They insisted you'd make it right once you calmed down." Calmed down. The same phrase I'd used when they were little and throwing tantrums. Now my own children were using it to discredit me. "Thank you for letting me know," I said quietly. "But they'll need to handle their rent themselves from now on." When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from weakness. From clarity. For years, I'd been cushioning their consequences. Paying their bills, smoothing their mistakes, keeping their world intact while mine cracked piece by piece. But this time, I wasn't their safety net. And I knew, sooner or later, everyone else would see who was really falling. By noon, Jenna called again. Her voice came fast, like she'd been holding her breath. "Claire. You need to see this. Don't scroll. Just check Facebook." My stomach turned. "What is it now?" "They're at the family reunion." I blinked. "What reunion?" "The one at Uncle Peter's place." They weren't invited, but they showed up anyway. "And, Claire, someone's live streaming." My pulse quickened. "Why would they go?" "To win sympathy," Jenna hissed. "They're talking about you. In front of everyone." For a second, I couldn't even move. I clicked the link she sent, and there it was, a grainy live video. A sunny backyard, folding chairs, picnic tables, kids running across the grass. The familiar chatter of my relatives. Then the camera turned. There they were, Ethan and Lila, standing in the middle of it all, their voices trembling just enough to sound believable. Lila held a napkin like it was a prop in a play. "We just want everyone to know," she began, "we love Mom. But she's not well right now. She's been spreading lies about us, saying we don't care about her birthday or her feelings." Ethan nodded solemnly beside her, his eyes downcast. "It's not true. We just needed space. She makes us feel guilty for living our lives." The camera zoomed closer. Aunt Maria murmured something off-screen. Then my cousin Lauren's voice cut through, loud and sharp. "Before or after you said her birthday didn't matter?" The yard went silent. Lila's head snapped up. "What?" Lauren stepped forward, holding her phone high. "Don't play dumb. You said it yourselves. It's on video." "What video?" Ethan demanded. His voice cracked just slightly. Lauren pressed play. And suddenly, from the tiny speaker in her hand, their own voices filled the air, cold, unmistakable. "Your birthday doesn't matter to us anymore." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aunt Maria covered her mouth. Uncle Peter shook his head. Even the kids stopped playing. The camera panned to my parents' faces, my children's faces, and I watched their color drain, inch by inch. "Did you think no one would find out?" Lauren said quietly. "You humiliated your own mother on the internet. And for what? Pity clicks?" Ethan tried to laugh it off, but it came out strangled. "You don't understand." "No," Lauren interrupted, voice like steel. "We do. We've watched her bend over backwards for you for years. And you spit on it. No one defended them. Not a single word. Lila's lip trembled, and for the first time, she looked like the little girl who used to run to me after dance recitals, asking, "Did I do good, Mommy?" But there was no stage left for her applause. Uncle Peter stood up slowly, his voice calm but firm. "If that's how you talk about the woman who raised you," he said, "you don't belong here." A murmur swept the crowd. Then silence. Ethan's mouth opened and closed, searching for words that weren't there. Lila stared at the grass. Finally, they turned and walked away, faces pale, shoulders tight. The camera followed them until they reached the gate. Then it cut out. I sat in my kitchen long after the video ended, the quiet pressing in like a blanket. Not joy. Not revenge. Just stillness. My phone buzzed again. "Jenna." "You saw it?" she asked. I did. They embarrassed themselves. Finally. A small laugh slipped from my lips. It wasn't cruel. Just, released. "Yeah," I whispered. And I didn't have to do a thing. That night, I went to bed early. No scrolling. No replaying the hurt. Just silence. For the first time in months, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. As I drifted toward sleep, I thought of something my husband once said years ago when Ethan was still in school and I was crying over his first big lie. "You don't have to prove the truth, Claire. It proves itself eventually." He'd been right. I didn't need to defend myself. The truth had done the work for me. When I woke the next morning, the air felt lighter. My phone was full of messages from relatives, apologies, support, words like "we didn't know," and "you didn't deserve that." I replied to none of them. I simply stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching the sunlight creep across the floor. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anyone to call. Sometimes silence isn't loneliness. It's peace. And that morning, peace looked a lot like freedom. By the time I poured my second cup of coffee, the entire town had seen the reunion video. My cousin Lauren had posted the full clip, unedited, unfiltered, and within hours, it had made its way across every family thread, every group chat, every local Facebook page that fed on gossip disguised as concern. "The truth about the Carter family." That was the title floating above it now. And for once, the truth wasn't being twisted. The comments rolled in faster than I could read them. How could anyone say that to their own mother? Those kids sound spoiled beyond belief. Finally, a parent standing up for herself. For months, I'd been the villain in their story. Now, I wasn't saying a word, and somehow that silence was louder than all their accusations combined. By noon, I got a message from the church secretary. "We thought you'd want to know, dear. The board decided to remove Ethan and Lila from the volunteer list. Too much attention right now." I didn't reply. Not out of satisfaction, but because there was nothing left to say. I hadn't asked for justice. It just showed up quietly, like a sunrise you didn't realize was coming until the light touched everything that used to be dark. That afternoon, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, a small cream-colored envelope sat on the doormat. No stamp. No sender name. Just my name written in careful cursive, Claire. Inside was a short note. "They chose pride. You chose peace. That's what love looks like. A friend who knows." I didn't recognize the handwriting, but I knew the meaning. Sometimes kindness doesn't need a name. I placed the note beside the photos of my husband and children on the mantel, where a family portrait used to hang. Then, for the first time in months, I lit a candle beneath it, not for loss, but for release. The following days passed quietly. The noise on social media began to fade, replaced by new scandals, new distractions. But in our small town, silence carries longer than sound. At the grocery store, people looked at me differently, not with pity, but with a kind of careful respect. Mrs. Riley from next door started stopping by in the evenings with leftover pie and small talk that didn't feel forced. "Seems like everyone finally knows what kind of woman you are," she said one night, smiling softly as she poured me tea. "The kind who gives until there's nothing left, and then somehow finds a way to give peace back to herself." I smiled, a real one this time. It only took a lifetime and a few $1,000s to learn that. She chuckled. "Expensive lesson, huh?" "The most expensive one," I said. One evening, as the rain pattered gently against the windows, my phone buzzed again. The name on the screen made my heart stutter, Ethan. I stared at it for a long moment before I answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then a deep breath. "Mom." His voice was quiet, raw around the edges. I know you saw everything." "I did." More silence. I could hear traffic in the background, the faint hum of city noise. "I didn't mean for it to get that bad," he said finally. "The video, the reunion, all of it, we just wanted people to understand our side." I swallowed hard. "And did they?" He hesitated. "No. Not really." Something inside me softened, but I didn't let it break open. "Not this time." "Mom," he continued, "Lila's been crying for days. We got kicked out of our apartment. No one wants to help us now. Everyone's treating us like we're monsters." I leaned against the counter, eyes closed. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said quietly. He exhaled sharply, almost a laugh. "That's it? You're not going to say, 'I told you so'?" "No," I said. "I'm just glad the truth finally spoke for itself." A long pause. Then, softer, "Mom, we were wrong." The words hung in the air like a fragile bridge between us. I wanted to run across it. But I'd learned something about bridges: you can't walk across one until you know it's strong enough to hold you. "I appreciate you saying that," I murmured. "But apology or not, things can't go back to the way they were." "I know," he whispered. "Good," I said. "Because I'm not the same woman who kept buying your peace." We stayed silent for a while. Then he cleared his throat. "Are you okay, Mom?" I smiled faintly. "Better than I've been in years." He let out a shaky breath. "I'm glad." When the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant either. Just calm. The next morning, I went for a walk. The rain had stopped, and the city smelled clean, like something old had been washed away. A few blocks down, a woman I barely knew from church stopped me. "Mrs. Carter," she said. "I saw the video, and the reunion clip. You handled it with so much grace. Most people would have fought back." I smiled gently. Sometimes fighting back means standing still and letting people reveal themselves. She nodded. "I'll remember that." So would I. That night, as I tucked away the last of the decorations from my forgotten birthday, I realized something quietly profound: forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it means accepting the apology that never came and moving on anyway. I turned off the lights and stood in the doorway, the hum of the house soft around me. For the first time, the silence didn't ache. It felt sacred. And when I whispered goodnight to the empty room, I didn't feel alone. I felt free. By the time the week ended, the storm had blown through. Not a literal one, the other kind. The digital kind. The kind that starts with outrage, feeds on gossip, and ends in exhaustion. The video that once made me a villain was now just another post swallowed by the endless scroll. But in our small city, people don't forget easily. They just whisper softer. On Friday morning, Mrs. Riley waved me over the fence. "Did you see the news?" she asked, eyes wide with the thrill of someone who hated gossip but loved justice. "What news?" She handed me her phone, the screen already open to a local blog. Community shocked as siblings face consequences for humiliating mother online. Ethan and Lila Carter, the adult children who posted a viral video accusing their mother of emotional abuse, have faced public backlash after leaked footage contradicted their claims. Their landlord confirmed eviction notices were served, and the church has removed them from their volunteer roster. I read it twice before handing the phone back. "They'll land on their feet," I said quietly. Mrs. Riley frowned. "You're kinder than most would be." "Kindness with boundaries," I replied, echoing something Aunt Virginia once told me. That's the new rule. Later that day, I went to the park for the first time in months. I brought a small thermos of coffee and sat on a bench beneath the jacaranda trees, their purple blooms scattering across the path like confetti from a parade I hadn't attended. I used to come here every Sunday with the kids when they were small. Ethan would race his bike up and down the path, shouting, "Watch me, Mom," while Lila built castles out of sand and stubbornness. The bench still had the faint carving Ethan made with a stick, 2 crooked letters, EC plus LC. Back then, I'd scolded him gently, telling him defacing public property was wrong. He'd laughed and said, "But Mom, it's not graffiti, it's family." Now I ran my hand over the faded marks, the grooves worn smooth by time. "So was I whispered. That afternoon, I decided to check my messages again. Buried under the notifications was one from Lila. "Mom, I know sorry isn't enough, but I need you to hear me out. Can we talk? Please." I read it several times, then typed slowly. "You can come by tomorrow at 4. Alone." Her reply came almost instantly. "I will. Thank you." The next day, she arrived right on time. For a moment, standing at my doorway, she looked like a stranger. Her once perfect hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her eyes were rimmed red, not from makeup, but from crying. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "Hi, Lila." We stood in silence for a moment before I stepped aside. "Come in." She glanced around the living room like it was a museum of a past life, photos on the mantel, her father's old watch, the faint smell of cinnamon from the candle burning on the counter. "I watched the reunion video," she said finally, voice trembling. "I can't believe I said those things. Or that people had to hear them before I realized how cruel I sounded." I stayed quiet. "I thought I was protecting myself," she continued. "But I was just echoing what Ethan said. I didn't even think about how it would hurt you." Her hands twisted in her lap. "When everyone turned on us, I kept telling myself we were the victims. But deep down, I knew. You didn't deserve that." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. "I'm so sorry, Mom." For a long moment, I said nothing. The silence stretched between us, not tense, not angry, just heavy with years of unsaid words. "I forgive you," I said finally. "But forgiveness doesn't rebuild trust. That takes time." She nodded, shoulders shaking. "I know. I'll earn it." "I hope so," I said. She looked up at me then, the same eyes that once stared at me from across a classroom stage, searching for approval. "Do you hate me?" "No," I said softly. "I hate what you did. But I could never hate you." Lila broke. The sound that escaped her wasn't elegant, it was the raw sob of someone who had been holding too much for too long. I walked over and wrapped my arms around her, not tightly, not completely, but enough. For the first time in years, I held my daughter without fear of losing myself in the process. When she left that evening, the house felt different, not lighter, not yet, but balanced. Like something broken had been acknowledged, even if it wasn't fixed. I stood by the window long after her car disappeared down the street, watching the golden hour fade into dusk. Maybe this was what healing really looked like, not grand gestures, not perfect endings, just small, steady moments of truth after the storm. That night, I wrote a short note in my journal. You can't buy love. You can only offer it freely, and pray it's received the same way. But if it isn't, that's not failure. That's clarity. I closed the journal, turned off the light, and let the quiet fill the room. Outside, the wind moved softly through the trees, carrying away the last pieces of a story I no longer needed to defend. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't fall asleep waiting for someone to remember me. I slept because I finally remembered myself. The next morning began like any other. The air was crisp, sunlight soft through the curtains, the smell of coffee curling into the corners of the kitchen. But something about the quiet felt different, not heavy, not lonely, just waiting. Around 10 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Not the hurried knock of a deliveryman, nor the familiar rhythm of Mrs. Riley next door. This one was slower, deliberate, as if the person on the other side wasn't sure they'd be welcomed. I opened it, and there he was. Ethan. His shoulders were hunched beneath a faded hoodie, eyes tired, beard uneven. He looked older, not by years, but by consequence. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Hi, Mom," he said finally, voice rough. I just nodded and stepped aside. "Come in." He hesitated before crossing the threshold, glancing around the living room the way a stranger does when they're afraid to touch anything. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. "You look good," he said. "I look different," I replied. "There's a difference." He gave a small, nervous laugh. "Yeah. I guess there is." I motioned to the chair across from me. "Sit." He did, hands clasped tight between his knees. For a moment, it was like watching the little boy who used to apologize after breaking something valuable, except this time, what he'd broken wasn't replaceable. "I saw Lila yesterday," I began. He looked up quickly. "She came here?" "She did." "She apologized." Ethan nodded slowly, eyes lowering again. "Yeah, she told me she was going to. I should have come sooner." "Why didn't you?" He exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Because I didn't know what I'd say that wouldn't sound like another excuse." I waited. He didn't fill the silence. Finally, he whispered, "I was angry, Mom. Angry that you stopped sending money. Angry that you were done cleaning up my messes. I thought you didn't care anymore." "And now?" I asked. He lifted his gaze, and in that single look, I saw the truth. Shame. Regret. The kind that sinks deeper than pride. "Now I realize," he said quietly, "you cared too much. You gave so much that you forgot yourself. And I let you." His words hit like a confession I'd been waiting years to hear. "You hurt me, Ethan," I said softly. "Not because you didn't show up, but because you made me feel like my love was disposable." "I know." His voice cracked. "And I hate that I did." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. After the reunion, after everyone saw that clip, I couldn't go anywhere without people looking at me like I was dirt. I wanted to blame them, or Lila, or even you. But then I remembered all those Mondays you sent the money. How you never asked for anything in return. Not even a call. I kept thinking, what kind of person treats that as a burden? He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know how to fix it, Mom. I don't think I can." I took a slow breath, letting the weight of the moment settle. "You can't fix the past," I said. "You can only live differently from now on." He nodded, eyes glistening. "Can I try?" "Yes," I said simply. "But on my terms this time." He frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means no more money," I said firmly. "No more rescue calls, no more guilt payments. If you come to me, come because you want to see me, not because you need something." He looked stunned, then nodded. "That's fair. And Ethan," I added softly, "I love you. But I won't let you love me only when it's convenient." He smiled faintly, eyes wet. "I don't deserve you." "No one has to deserve love," I said. "They just have to respect it." For a long while, we sat in the quiet. The kind that used to sting, but now just breathed with us. Then he stood. "Can I hug you?" I hesitated, not out of anger, but out of caution. Then I nodded. He stepped forward, arms wrapping around me. And for a moment, I felt that little boy again, the one who used to cling to my neck after nightmares, whispering, "Don't let go." Only this time I knew I could. When he pulled back, he looked lighter. So did I. "I'm proud of you," I said quietly. "For what?" "For showing up," I replied. "For facing it. That's more than most ever do." He swallowed hard. "Can I come by again? Maybe help around the house or just talk sometimes?" I smiled. "We'll see. But if you do, bring yourself, not your guilt." He nodded, laughing softly through tears. "Deal." After he left, the house felt different. Not empty, just open. I sat back down with my coffee and watched the light shift across the floorboards, the late afternoon sun painting everything gold. This was what healing looked like, not a perfect reunion, not tears and apologies that erased the past, but two people finally standing in the same truth. I realized something then: when love comes back, it shouldn't cost you anything. That evening, as I folded laundry in the living room, my phone buzzed with a message from Lila. "Ethan said you talked. Thank you for giving us both a chance." "We're trying, Mom." "Really?" I smiled, typing back. "Trying is a good start." Then I set the phone down, turned off the lights, and let the silence fill the room. It didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt earned. The days after Ethan's visit felt strangely peaceful. Not perfect, peaceful. The kind of peace that hums softly in the background, like a song you didn't realize you'd missed until it played again. For years, I'd woken up for someone else. To send money. To fix something. To fill a silence my children never tried to cross. But now, every morning felt like mine. I started small. I planted basil in the kitchen window. Rearranged the living room furniture to face the sunlight instead of the TV. Took long walks without glancing at my phone every few minutes, afraid I'd miss a message asking for more. The first time I sat in the park without checking my banking app at 9 a.m., I almost cried, not because I missed the routine, but because I didn't. It was freedom disguised as simplicity. Mrs. Riley noticed the change before I did. "You look 10 years younger," she said one afternoon as we watered her rose bushes. I laughed. 10 years of stress will age anyone. She smiled knowingly. "No, dear. 10 years of silence. And you finally stopped carrying it alone." She wasn't wrong. There's a certain weight that comes from constantly explaining yourself, from begging people to see your worth. When you stop doing that, the world doesn't shrink, it opens. One evening, I pulled down the box of old family photos from the top of my closet. I hadn't touched it since before my husband died. Back then, I'd tucked it away thinking I'd open it again when things felt right. But that moment never came, until now. I spread the photos across the dining table. Ethan, missing a tooth, holding up his first trophy. Lila, her hair in messy pigtails, icing on her nose from her 7th birthday cake. My husband, arms wrapped around both of them, the corners of his smile soft and proud. In every picture, I was there too, but always behind the camera. It struck me suddenly: I'd spent a lifetime documenting everyone else's joy but never standing in my own. That realization hit deeper than any of their words ever had. I picked up one photo. Our family at the lake, sunlight bouncing off the water, laughter frozen midair. My husband's eyes were crinkled at the edges, and I remembered what he'd said to me that day. "One day, Claire, when they're all grown, I hope you'll remember who you were before you became Mom." I hadn't. Not until now. That night, I took a long bath for the first time in years. No phone nearby. No to-do list in my head. Just steam, lavender, and silence. I caught my reflection in the mirror afterward, tired eyes, soft wrinkles, silver strands threading through my hair, and I smiled. Not because I liked everything I saw, but because I finally recognized her. The woman who'd been waiting behind sacrifice, still standing. The next morning, I made myself pancakes from scratch, the kind I used to make for the kids on Sunday mornings. Halfway through eating, I laughed at how ridiculous it felt to flip pancakes for one person. But the laughter stayed. After breakfast, I walked to the market, bought flowers for the kitchen table, and let myself wander through the aisles without rushing. A vendor selling old vinyl stopped me. "You've got the look of someone who used to dance," he said with a grin. "Used to," I replied. "Well," he said, handing me a record, "it's never too late to start again." I bought it. I didn't even have a record player. That evening, Lila called. Not to ask for money. Not to apologize again. Just to talk. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice soft but lighter than I'd heard in years. "I saw the pictures you posted of the basil. You finally planted something." "I did," I said, smiling. "And it's growing." "That's good," she said quietly. "You sound happy." "I am," I admitted. "It feels strange, but good." "I'm glad," she whispered. Then after a pause, "Do you think I could come over next weekend? Maybe help you set up that garden you used to talk about?" "Maybe," I said gently. "Let's take things slow." "Slow's okay," she said. "I'm not in a rush anymore." Neither was I. After the call, I sat outside on the porch, watching the sky shift from gold to violet. A breeze brushed the wind chimes, filling the air with soft, uneven notes. I realized something then: love isn't a transaction, a duty, or even a guarantee. It's an invitation, one you can choose to accept, or decline, or reopen when the time is right. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anyone to accept mine. I had learned to give it to myself. I went inside, placed the record I'd bought on the table, and whispered to the empty room, "Tomorrow, I'll buy the player." Not because I needed music, but because I finally had space to let it play. A week later, the record player arrived. The box sat unopened on my table for a full day. Not because I was unsure about it, but because I wanted to savor the moment. For years, I'd rushed through everything: birthdays, holidays, even grief. Always hurrying to meet someone else's needs. But that morning, I took my time. I brewed coffee slowly, the kind that fills the house with the smell of roasted peace. Opened the curtains wide so sunlight could spill across the floorboards. Then I slit the tape and lifted the lid. Inside was the simplest thing: a sleek black turntable, clean and new. And beside it, the record I'd bought from the market vendor, a jazz album, one my husband used to hum while washing dishes. I set it carefully on the platter. The needle dropped. A faint crackle. Then, music. Soft, rich, alive. It filled the quiet corners of the house that had once echoed with emptiness. And for the first time in years, I danced. Not gracefully, not even in rhythm. But freely. Bare feet against cold tiles. Coffee forgotten on the counter. My laughter, real, unpracticed, spilling through the kitchen like sunlight after a storm. Later that afternoon, I visited the community center for the first time in years. A flyer had been taped to my mailbox a few days earlier. Wellness Wednesdays, yoga, art, and connection for women 40+. Old me would have tossed it straight into the bin. But this version of me? She tucked it in her purse. The instructor greeted me with an easy smile. "You must be new." "Yes," I said, slightly embarrassed. "It's been a long time since I did anything like this." "Well, welcome back to yourself," she said. That single sentence settled in my chest like warmth. By the end of class, I was shaky and sore, but my mind felt still. The instructor asked us to write one word on a sticky note that described how we felt. Some women wrote peaceful. Others wrote hopeful. I wrote becoming. Because that's what healing felt like, not a finish line, but a gentle unfolding. When I got home, there was an envelope in the mail with familiar handwriting. Ethan's. Inside was a photo, a snapshot from when he was 10, grinning with a missing tooth, his arm around Lila's shoulder. On the back, he'd written, "We found this in Dad's old drawer. Thought you should have it. Thank you for never giving up on us." Below that, just one more line. Dinner soon? Our treat this time. My eyes stung, but I smiled. I propped the photo on the fridge beside the others, my husband's, Lila's, even mine, the new one Mrs. Riley had taken of me laughing in her garden. For the first time, it felt like a complete family wall, past, present, and possibility. That evening, I walked down to the pier just as the sun was setting. Families strolled by, couples held hands, children laughed and fed crumbs to seagulls. It should have made me feel lonely. Instead, I felt grounded. A woman sitting on a nearby bench smiled at me. "You come here often?" she asked. "Not in years," I replied. "But I think I will now." We talked for nearly an hour, about music, about growing older, about the strange, quiet joy of starting over when no one expects you to. Her name was Evelyn. She'd moved to town last year after retiring. Before we left, she said, "You don't look like someone starting over. You look like someone coming home to herself." I laughed softly. Maybe that's what I'd been doing all along. When I returned home, I played the record again. The same song. The same melody that had once belonged to the past. Only now, it belonged to me. I thought about my children, not with anger, not with longing, but with a kind of tender understanding. They were still learning too. And maybe that was enough. Before bed, I wrote in my journal. Happiness isn't what you get when others come back. It's what grows when you stop leaving yourself. I closed the journal, placed it on the bedside table, and turned off the lamp. The room glowed faintly with moonlight, shadows stretching softly across the walls. And as the house settled into its quiet rhythm, I realized something simple, something I hadn't understood in years. Peace isn't loud. It's the sound of your own heart, steady and sure, finally keeping time with itself. The morning began with rain, not the heavy, punishing kind, but the quiet drizzle that washes dust off leaves and makes the air smell clean again. I stood by the window, a warm mug in hand, watching water beat on the glass. Every drop traced its own path downward, some fast, some slow, and I thought, that's what healing looks like. It doesn't fall all at once. It finds its own rhythm. The house was still, yet alive in small ways. The record player sat on the counter, waiting. The basil in the kitchen window had grown tall, leaves brushing against the glass like it wanted to see the world outside. And on the fridge, between old family photos and new beginnings, was a note from Lila. "Mom, dinner was perfect. Thank you for giving us another chance. We love you." Underneath, a small drawing, 3 hearts linked together. Hers. Ethan's. Mine. I smiled, tracing the ink with my thumb. We were still far from perfect, but at least we were honest now. Honesty was something money could never buy. I spent the morning cleaning, humming softly to the jazz record spinning in the background. The same one I'd danced to barefoot a week ago. Every note felt like a heartbeat I'd learned to listen to again. Halfway through dusting the shelves, I found a folded piece of paper tucked behind an old photo frame, my husband's handwriting, neat and familiar. A letter I must have tucked away years ago. "Claire, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there to remind you, stop trying to hold everything together for everyone. You've spent your life building homes in other people's hearts. Build one for yourself too. I know you will. You always do." The words blurred through my tears. He'd always seen the parts of me I was too busy to notice. And somehow, he still knew exactly what I'd needed to hear, even after all these years. That afternoon, I met Jenna for lunch at the small cafe near the library. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes bright. "Well, would you look at you," she teased. "You're glowing." "Maybe it's the basil plant," I said, grinning. She laughed, then reached across the table. "No, Claire. It's peace. It finally suits you." I chuckled softly. Peace took its sweet time getting here. "It always does," she said. We talked for hours, about family, forgiveness, and how life rarely gives us apologies in the order we want them. Before we left, Jenna squeezed my hand. You didn't just teach your kids a lesson. You taught yourself one. That you matter too. I smiled. That might be the hardest one to learn. When I got home, I opened the back door to let in the breeze. The air was cool, the garden quiet except for the soft hum of life, bees, rustling leaves, the faint laughter of children playing somewhere down the street. I stepped outside barefoot, feeling the damp ground beneath my feet. For so long, I'd associated this house with waiting for calls, for visits, for love I had to chase. But now, it was simply home. Not a place of longing, but of arrival. I looked up at the sky, the clouds breaking apart to reveal a pale blue that looked almost new. Thank you, I whispered, not to anyone in particular, but to life itself. Thank you for the heartbreak that taught me boundaries. For the silence that taught me strength. For the loss that gave me back myself. As evening settled in, I set the table for one, a simple dinner, candle lit beside my plate. Not a symbol of loneliness, but of presence. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, every breath. Halfway through, my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Mom, Lila, and I are visiting Aunt Jenna this weekend. Can we stop by? Maybe bring dessert? I smiled, typing back. Of course. Bring yourselves too. That's all I need. Later, I sat in my favorite chair by the window, journal open on my lap. I wrote. Once, I thought peace was something others could give me, a call, a visit, a kind word. But peace isn't delivered. It's chosen. And I choose it every day now, even on the quiet ones. I set the pen down, listening to the rain taper off outside. The sky was darkening, the first star blinking faintly through the clouds. For years, I'd believed my story was about loss. But standing there, in the gentle silence of my own making, I realized it was never about what I'd lost. It was about what I'd finally found, myself. I turned off the lights, the candle flickering softly as I whispered one last thing to the room. Some betrayals don't need revenge. They need forgiveness and distance. And both are acts of love. Then I smiled, closed my eyes, and let the sound of soft rain carry me into sleep, not as a mother trying to keep everyone together, but as a woman finally whole on her own.